Okay, let's start with the elephant in the room. Going undefeated in modern college football is like trying to balance a flaming torch on your nose while riding a unicycle. It's ridiculously hard. But here we are, looking at 10 teams that might actually pull it off in 2026. And honestly, the list is way more fascinating than just talent or rankings. Let me break this down. First off, Texas Tech at number 1? That's not a typo. Their schedule is basically a cakewalk compared to everyone else. No BYU, no Utah, just a bunch of games where they'll be massive favorites. But here's the thing, talent gaps in college football are filled by the transfer portal now. So even if they lose a QB like Sorsby, they can just plug in someone else. But is that sustainable? I mean, how much can a team rely on next man up philosophy when one bad game could end the season? That's the gamble Tech's making. Now, Notre Dame at 2. Marcus Freeman has a problem. His team gets everyone's best shot every week. Remember their 2025 opener against Miami? Lost that, then Texas A&M? Game over. So here's the question, can a team stay locked in all season when they're constantly hyped up for top-tier games but risk overlooking weaker opponents? It's a mental game as much as a physical one. And Freeman's got to make sure they don't peak too early. Miami at 3? This is where it gets spicy. They're in the same boat as Notre Dame, loaded with talent, but their schedule is deceptively tricky. They're avoiding the Big Ten powerhouses but still have Clemson and a brutal road trip to South Bend. But here's what I'm thinking, Miami's offense is going to be explosive. They brought in Mensah from Duke, which feels like a low-key steal. But can their defense, which lost 2 first-rounders, hold up? Because in the modern spread era, you can't just outscore everyone forever. At some point, someone's going to punch you in the mouth. Let's talk about Oregon and Indiana. Both have the same killer slate of games, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington. But why does Oregon get the slight edge? The article says it's because of their QB situation, but I think it's deeper than that. Dan Lanning's program has been haunted by postseason collapses. The 2024 Rose Bowl loss to Ohio State? The 2025 semifinal versus Indiana? They've got a chip on their shoulder. But does that translate to regular season resilience? Maybe. Indiana, on the other hand, is banking on Josh Hoover from TCU. Is that enough to outplay Oregon's experience? I'm not so sure. Georgia at 6? Kirby Smart's teams are always built for this. 3-12-0 regular seasons under him, including 2023. But here's the catch, their schedule is brutal. Alabama in Tuscaloosa? Ole Miss? Missouri? That's a gauntlet. And let's not forget, Georgia hasn't won in Bryant-Denny since 2007. That's a generational drought. Is this the year they break the curse? Or is that mental block going to come back to bite them? Penn State at 7? This one surprised me. They're avoiding Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, but their schedule isn't exactly a picnic. USC, Michigan, and Washington? That's still terrifying. But here's the angle, Matt Campbell's transfer strategy. If he's built a roster that's deep enough to survive injuries and inconsistency, they could be the Big Ten's dark horse. But are we underestimating how much beating USC early would matter? Because if they're 6-0 heading into the Michigan game, suddenly everyone's talking about Penn State. Ohio State at 8? Ohio State. Look, their schedule is a nightmare. 5 road games against top-tier opponents. At Texas, at Iowa, at Indiana, at USC, plus Michigan? That's insanity. And even if they're loaded talent-wise, how do you survive that gauntlet? The article says a 3-loss team could still make the playoff, but here's the thing, in the expanded playoff era, does a 3-loss team even get a shot? Or does the committee prioritize teams with cleaner resumes? That's the real question here. NC State at 9? This is where the article gets wild. They're the outlier in terms of pure talent, but their schedule is a dream. Only Louisville from the top 25? That's bonkers. But here's the catch, can CJ Bailey carry them? Because if he's not all ACC, this whole thing collapses. And even if he is, how do you prepare for the pressure of being undefeated? That's the unseen weight. One slip up and the narrative's gone. Texas at 10. Wait, Texas has 8 top 25 opponents? That's the most in the SEC. And yet they're 10th? Because the schedule is just evil. Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M, and that Ohio State opener? Even if they're loaded, can they survive September? Because October's going to be a bloodbath. But here's the twist, if they do survive that stretch, they're legit. But is it worth the risk? In the playoff era, is an undefeated record even necessary? Or is the whole point just to make the field and let the chips fall where they may? So stepping back, what's the bigger story here? It's not just about talent or schedules. It's about how the transfer portal and expanded playoff have changed the calculus. Teams aren't just playing to win games, they're playing to survive them. And in 2026, the line between brilliance and disaster is thinner than ever. Which brings me to my final thought, if you had to bet your life on one team staying perfect, who would it be? Because I'd be terrified to pick any of these. But that's what makes college football so addictive, right?